next very important service which we have is known as conditional access. Conditional access, as the name suggests, based on condition, right? So what is conditional access? It is a if and then statement kind of service which is executed. So it extends your security, Azure security perimeter, and it also helps to identify which user is trying to sign in, which device is trying to sign in. And under the zero trust policy, that means usually conditional access is a part of zero trust policy, in which from the various sources all the signals are considered when any policy is to be enforced, right? So conditional access is if and then how. If a user wants access, then what needs to be done by the user? This is decided. For example, a user wants access to an application or a service, then they must complete the MFA. So either then the after completing the MFA, there is a requirement of MFA, or allow the access or block the access. So use signals to make informed decisions based on the decision of the organizational policy and enforce the decision across resources. So in conditional access, we take signals from various resources like users and location. So it can be for a specific group of users in which you want to have fine grained control. Maybe some applications or devices. Devices, that means users with the device of a specific platform, right? When you are enforcing the conditional access policy on them, you can use filters for the devices for the specific policies. We have applications where users are trying to attempt access to a particular application, right? So that can also trigger conditional access. Then we have real-time risk, where you have signals from here. Basically, we have signals from Microsoft Identity Protection, in which we have already seen in real time how the sign-in risky users are detected. And we have the users and their locations based on the IP location. If the user is from the trusted IP address range, then it can be useful for making policy decisions whether we have to allow the access, require MFA, or block the access. Now, when you have conditional access, based on these conditions as we have just visited, you can perform certain actions. It gives you two-step authentication verification and lets you enforce controls on access to apps based on a specific condition. When this happens, then what will happen? Okay. So, for example, a user is there which is trying to access a particular application. What needs to be done? Okay, if he wants to try to access the application, he has to complete the MFA, then the sign-in will be completed. So to view the conditional access, we can again go to the Azure portal, and we have the option to configure conditional access in the portal. So we have the service called as Microsoft Entra Conditional Access. Let's click on that. So when you have conditional access in your environment, so we try to gather different types of session details, and then we want to enforce based on the session details gathered. We create a policy either to block the access or block or grant the access with MFA, right? So these types of assignments can be done for users, groups, cloud applications, based on the type of the location that they are trying to sign in, based on the type of the application that they are trying to sign in, and so on. So when you are trying to create a conditional access in the portal, the first thing is that we will try to create a new policy, right? And for example, I want to have the MFA drive, okay, for which users. So you need to select the users for which you want to have the conditional access policy. Maybe I want to select a specific users. Again, exclude option denotes the same importance, that if you select all the users, you must exclude admin users from this, right? So I want to select users and groups. So which users and groups? I have to select it manually from here. So I will apply or Aniket and Anish. These are the two users. And then under, when you go for workloads, what to include. So we have already selected two of the users. Then we have the option of target resources, where the resource is trying to sign in, or apps or application the resource is trying to sign in. So if I click on target resources, we have certain applications. If I select all applications, you can also select individual applications where the user will try to sign in. So as of now, we don't have any individual application. So you can click on select portal Office 365, right? So you can select one among these. So I will just show you quickly which are the options, right? So you can select admin portal, you can select Azure management portal or Office 365, any of the service which you want to consider here. So you can select Microsoft Azure management service as well. This I'm selecting, and one more is Microsoft admin. So when the users will try to sign in these two applications, the selected users, what is the condition? So in the condition, you have the option to access controls based on the user risk, sign in risk you can configure, or you if you want to grant access or allow access, we can set certain conditions here. But as of condition, we'll leave it as it is. Then we'll click on access controls, and I want to select here that I want to grant access. But with multi-factor authentication, I will grant it. So grant access but require multi-factor authentication. This option is checked, and you can select for all the selected controls. I will select yes. So now we have the proper policy in place, and then we will try to activate the policy. So in the report only, you can only see the configuration which would affect users. In off, the policy is not applicable. You have to set it as on and create it. Let's disable security by defaults. I want to use conditional access, so I am saving the security settings. Now when whatever users, two users you have selected, when they try to sign in, they have to first complete the sign in event with the MFA, and then they can sign in. So in this way you can even test location as a headquarters. You can add the named location here. You have the option of checking all the policies which are into place, and checking the policies which are in overview section. So you have the option that you can select the country's location, maybe some headquarters you want to add. So Azure portal as John, and try to do a lot of things, because he anyway John is having a security administrator permission. So when you have privileged roles in the organization, we can manage those privileged roles with the help of privileged identity management. In this, what we do, for example, John is a security administrator. So just keep aside the factor that John is a security administrator. Just focus on a security administrator role, which is of a privilege aspect. Now we want to prevent anyone who is a security administrator to have this access 24 cross 7. So we don't want anyone to have this permission always. Why? Because if we give permissions, we activate the permissions, anyone who has compromised ID, they can sign in and do a lot of things which are malicious attempts in the account. So rather than that, we give a timed duration in which someone can work as a security administrator, billing administrator, etc. So not rather than giving 24 cross 7 access, we are giving limited time access on an approval mechanism. So who is going to approve the request? Either the PIM manager or someone whom you have assigned the higher privileges role, right? So this is what we discuss in privileged identity management. So anyone who is when organization wants to minimize the number of people who have access to the secure information or secure resources, or any malicious attempts that can be impacting the Azure account, then we have privileged identity management. And also you must have licenses to go ahead with the PIM. And here we basically focus on two things: time based and approval based. Time based is we can also go with a property of just in time access. That means only when it is required we give the access. Once the work is done, we remove the access. And upon a time bound mechanism, that means, for example, John wants to work as a security administrator for 2 hours, so we will activate it for 2 hours duration. Then it is also approval based. So once the approval is sent, then only John can act as a security administrator. And not only just sending the information, it must sending the request, but it must be approved also. So lot of justifications, notifications, access review help we can take to work with the privileged identity management. Now let's understand privileged identity more. Now here you can see Microsoft zero trust model. So Microsoft follows zero trust model. What is Microsoft zero trust model? According to Microsoft zero trust model, we assume, breach and verify each of the requests which is coming towards the account. So be it any identity, that means a user, or any device which is trying to sign in, we will check whether the multi-factor authentication is completed or not, or whether the device, what is the state of the device, it is secure or not. And under the policy that we have set, we will try to classify, label, or put the threat protection in place, and also take the help of some threat intelligence service to better manage our network. So we don't trust anything. Zero trust model is just don't trust anything, verify everything, and then proceed ahead with the request, send the request ahead. So how identity management evolution came into picture? So we recommend Azure AD, privileged identity management, as a service to help and protect your privileged accounts. So earlier what was happening, what was the traditional approach? On-premises identity provider is in use and no single sign-on was there. In the advanced features, we have cloud identity federated services with the on-prem, and we have conditional access. But with optimal evolution, we go with a passwordless approach. We enforce the MFA and we try to analyze each request which is coming towards the account. This is what is the optimal behavior. Now let's understand PIM. So these are the properties associated with PIM. This is a time-based and approval-based mechanism where just-in-time privileges are set for the accounts. It is a time-bound access which is provided to the user, and it is based on approval. So if he sends the request, it will be approved by the owner, and then he can work within the time-bound given. Multi-factor authentication can be used. Justification. Now there are two types of users that we have when you go ahead with the PIM. One is eligible assignment, one is active assignment. What is eligible assignment? Eligible assignment denotes that someone is eligible to work as a security administrator, but he is not working 24/7 as a security administrator. So he will send a request, the request will be approved, and then he can work. But if you are going on to set the PIM and there you put active assignment, that means you are stating that he will work continuously without any approval mechanism. He will work as a security administrator. So in that case, you have to justify why you are making him 24/7 as a security administrator. So you will say maybe trusted resource it is, and so on. Notifications when privileged accounts are activated. So you can even notify the owners or managers or PIM managers that someone is now active as a PIM, working under as a PIM user. Access review. Access review is, for example, there are two users, John and Vivek. So Vivek was working as a security administrator, but now he has moved to some other project and there he is working as a billing administrator. So since he moved to other project, he has additional role which is of a billing administrator. But what about the previous role? That is still attached with Vivek. So we do continuous access reviews to check and understand which user has what roles activated along with them, present with them at the moment, and if it is required or not. So under the access review, we try to push a mail understanding whether these two roles which are attached to the user are required by the user or not. If he replies as yes, it will be attached. If he replies as no, it will be detached. And the other cases, if he does not reply, then also it will be detached. So it's a review cycle that happens. Also, we can go for audit history for internal and external audit purposes. So how do we, what is the scope? So all the Azure AD rules and Azure users can be covered, right? So under PIM, it can be protected. So users can have, it can elevate their permissions, right? Azure AD roles, or even the resources. So you can understand which resources are very important to your organization and you can protect them under the PIM scope. So before we go for access review, let's understand the PIM from portal. So here we are with privileged identity management and a quick start. So how do you manage users? So users with excessive access are vulnerable in the event of account compromise, and ensure your organization manages least privilege by periodically review. This is what we call as access review. Then you have just-in-time access. So you can reduce the level of exposure that you have over the account. So you can enforce just-in-time access for the critical roles, and you can discover and monitor. So here we have certain categories like task, manage, activity. So in this you have my roles section. There are three assignments that you will see here: eligible, active, and expired for the roles. If you have a eligible role, it will come here. If you have an active role without with the justification, it will come here. And if you have some expired assignments, that will also be covered. And we have the groups and resources which are protected. We'll go back to my request. My requests are the requests that you have sent to be approved by the approver. If you are the approver, then you have to check in approve request section. And if any request is pending in the approve section, you will approve those requests. So you will only get the request when you are the approver. And we have Microsoft Entra roles, groups, and Azure resources. Thank you everyone. Like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel and keep learning.